All right, welcome everyone to the 10th episode of the AdvisorTech Book Live podcast. This is a live show that I'm actually going to be starting to do daily, probably in the next few weeks. But for now, people can join, they can comment, they can leave, they can do reactions. So the goal is for this to be pretty fun and helpful for folks. But our guest today is Mark Friedenthal with Tolerisk. Welcome, Mark.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So I'd like to get started talking about a book you're reading or a tech you're playing with. We were talking a little bit about like the various LLMs, maybe one that you're using the most or enjoying, or maybe some of the nuances between them.
So, professionally at Tolerus, we explore a lot of different LLMs, and we've done some pretty cool stuff with the product very very recently, even. But on a personal note, I love my Chat GPT. I have a paid subscription. It is so worth it to have all the history and have it know me on different devices, and I talk to it extemporaneously in the car when I'm driving, which is just it's fun, it's useful. I use it for everything from navigational assistance, finding things when I'm traveling, come up with a recipe. I have the following ingredients, and of course we use it, for all kinds of things related to our professional lives too. But I found it's really fun.
So how do you reference? Is it like a friend? Is it a technology assistant? How do you think about it as you use it
Well, it's
regularly?
not a friend in the real sense, but it behaves like that
Sure,
in a lot of ways. I find it has replaced a lot of what I used to do in a search engine like Google.
sure.
I find that I can be more explicit. I mean, everything from medical questions to, restaurants or locations, or I mean, it's just so broad. And most of the time, it's pretty darn good. It's not perfect. And you have to be aware of that when you go in. If you're doing something really important, you have to go in assuming that it is fallible. And it's certainly going to keep getting better, and it's also going to produce better results as you as a consumer get better at prompting it. But I've just found it tremendously powerful and rather entertaining too.
Is there any negatives about AI that you've personally experienced or that you're concerned about? Or are you like very positive about it overall?
I'm very positive overall. I mean, there are some things that are scary. I haven't witnessed a really concerning or troublesome experience firsthand, at least. I think once you accept that it isn't perfect, and you have to approach it, certainly anytime you're doing something of any import, that you go into it knowing that you still have to, in a sense, double check. You still have to uh, take it with a grain of salt. But
Sure.
that doesn't mean it's not super helpful and can really guide a dialogue or an exploration or things like that.
Yeah. No, I was using it regularly. I mean, multiple times a day for months probably. And
Did you
then
stop?
I'm trying to, yeah. No, I'm taking a super anti AI approach in like all my writing right now, and just basically saying like, if you want to develop your brain, which is your most valuable asset, like continue thinking on your own, continue
Mm.
creating creatively. Like don't use all prompts from AI. If you need
I
advice on something, like ask an actual human. That's kind of the approach I'm leaning toward
I,
at this point.
I can see it. And I think there have been historical analogs. I grew up learning math in a different way than my kids do, where everything is so computer oriented. Um, and I'm sure my father, he used a slide rule, as
Yeah.
opposed to a calculator when he was in elementary school. There there are differences, but we've all, as a society, we have gotten past that. We will change the skills that we use, and we'll change the skills that we value. And
Right.
I personally, while I agree with you, there is some risk. Are we preventing people from learning some of the skills that we value? Yeah, I think that's fair. Um, will we replace those things? Probably. My kids are teenagers, and I have one learning to drive. In a few more years, I don't think we'll teach kids to drive.
Yeah.
Now, I had to learn how to drive a stick shift
Right.
because if you were the sober person in a group and the only available car was a manual transmission, you better gosh darn know how to drive it. I
Right.
would never require my kids to learn how to drive a stick. I am requiring them to learn how to drive a car, but boy, we're on the precipice of that being an obsolete skill.
Interesting. Yeah. No, my wife and I are like literally going the opposite direction. We like want to buy an old stick shift truck and just like drive it around on our farm just for fun. Um, but yeah, it's well, it's like all the I don't know what they call them, engine heads or something. Like all the guys that were like super pro like muscle cars, and then the electric cars, the electric like super cars came out, and they were pretty anti like this isn't even real electric, or this isn't like a real car experience. Sorry, I'm hearing some
but
feedback.
they
Oh,
but they adopted it.
yeah, but then more and more, um, yeah, I'm getting feedback on my own audio. That's interesting. Um, yeah, so more and more, that's distracting hearing myself talking. Um, all right, I'll just try to ignore it.
I don't hear it.
Okay.
Do you hear it when you speak, Joe, or when I speak, or both?
Yeah, when I'm speaking, I'm hearing it in my earpiece, but I'm just gonna ignore it. It'll be all right. Um, yeah. So it will be super interesting. I think there will be people in both camps. I think there'll be like super pro AI people, and there will be like people that are like, I'm not touching it at all. And I think there will be benefits to both in a way. So any other thoughts on that subject?
I mean, there's a lot to unpack with AI, and there's a lot of different kinds of AI. Nowadays, we're used to talking about LLMs because that's been kind of the hot new thing. But I mean, I've been working with types of AI for 30 plus years. Things like neural networks, which are really artificial neural networks, genetic algorithms, things that are much more math and data based than language based, which is obviously the big AI models now, LLMs, large language models. But there are other things too. We were talking about driving. I mean, that's a form of AI. I mean, what's Tesla's vision? I don't mean vision like thinking of the future. I mean like their vision system, where it's looking at the imagery from all these different angles and all these different cameras, and and based on that, it is measuring how quickly you're approaching an object or an object's approaching you, and all different kinds of traffic related imagery and things like that. It's all a form of AI. It's a different type of AI than say ChatGPT or something,
Sure.
or a genetic algorithm or neural network or something that's doing something else predictive. So I mean, even like you've seen the commercial for, I think it's one of the Adobe products like Photoshop or something, where they're saying, hey, can you remove this person from the background, right? Well, it's using AI. It's basically saying, based on the rest of the image, based on the pixels around the image it's identified, what's the light, what's the shadow, what's the all these different things, and it's making a prescriptive guess as to what the pixels were behind this image. And in
Right.
most cases, they've gotten pretty good.
Yeah.
I think it'll keep getting better, and I think that I still think we're in the early stages of how AI is going to be used, and there will be negatives too. I mean, we could get into the risks. You're going to have bad actors that are also using this technology to really up their game as perpetrators.
Right.
And you're gonna find the good guys are also gonna up their game to catch the bad guys. I think there's gonna be a lot of advancement, things that we haven't really conceptualized yet.
Yeah. No, I like to compare it to social media, and it's actually interesting because I kind of pulled back from most social media platforms for a while, and now that I'm like building my brand, I'm like getting on every single social media platform. So like social media definitely has its negative effects, and just doom scrolling and like just huge time wasters. And
Sure.
but there's very big positives to it too. Cool.
Yeah, and you think about the potential negatives, not just specifically of social media, but of the culture that has become so digital.
Right.
I do worry that kids of this generation won't develop the same interpersonal skills, the in-person communication skills that I'll say we did, although I'm probably older than you, but that earlier generations developed.
Right.
They text, they don't pick up the phone.
Right.
It is different, and I think some kids it may not be an impediment, but I'll bet you there are a lot of kids where it is.
I think I was just hanging out on the Kids' Financial Planning Value Summit before this, and he was referencing his. I think it was from the technology survey, but basically, um, advisors implementing technology for the purpose of being more efficient versus advisors implementing technology for the purpose of like a better client experience or a deeper client experience. The the ones that are more focused on the client experience, I forget the exact metric, but they're like twice as impactful to the bottom line as ones that are implemented for efficiency purposes.
That's really
Um,
interesting.
and I find that fascinating because like AI note takers are pretty much all have some sort of marketing message around we'll save you 10 hours a week or something. Um, and I think they do for sure save time, and they do like move action items past the advisor to the staff, and like they make a lot of processes better. But I'm wondering, can AI be used to improve the client experience? And maybe that's even more impactful than just saving time.
Yeah, we use AI at Tolerisk, and it is. I mean, our earliest implementation of AI was to improve our own process. It had nothing to do with our users
Sure.
or their experience. We used it with the developers, right? Our developers use AI to code faster.
Yeah.
That's great. It's a purely a time saver. Nobody interacting with our system or technology would know necessarily one way or another. This year though, we've rolled out user features and they're all designed for advisor client interaction and engagement. It's all designed to help the advisor improve their engagement with the client.
Yeah.
Um, it's going to assist most advisors, not all, not everybody's willing to embrace this kind of thing yet, but it's going to help most advisors and it's going to help them with some to most clients. They're also going to use their judgment. They're not going to, the good ones are not forcing this upon their clients, but
Yeah.
they're making these experiences available to clients that would benefit from them. And that population is growing as people
Yeah.
become more and more comfortable with these kinds of technologies.
That's a good perspective. And that's a good segue into like the next part of the podcast, which is maybe just a brief history of your background in the industry and then why you chose to build technology in the risk tolerance space particularly.
So I'll preface with I'm old for technology. This is like career number three for me.
Okay.
I was a corporate Wall Street guy for the first half of my career. Actually, I started in financial services regulation back in the mid '90s. I worked at the Federal
Mm.
Reserve in bank and bank holding company and subsidiary, like security subsidiary regulation. And then I went really a more corporate type track, big, huge conglomerates like GE Capital, Citigroup, and then I left and I started an RIA about 16, 17 years ago. And I had a crazy tech budget at GE and Citigroup, like jaw dropping. Obviously, I didn't have that in starting, my
Yeah.
own firm, but I tended to really value technology and I tended to probably spend a lot more on technology than I think most people in that situation would. My view is that's how you build something scalable, that
Right.
you have to put the infrastructure in place in order to scale and thus be profitable in a bigger scale rather than do it a little tiny bit at a time as you had more money, which I think is a lot of what some startups in the space do. In any case, I used lots of high end vended technology. I had a Bloomberg day one, which is expensive by RIA standards, and e-money and Tamarack and Redtail and all kinds of good stuff. I could not find a decent solution to help me and help my advisors profile the client and align their portfolios and do it in a scientific way. What I
Mm,
found were these very basic rudimentary quizzes. I found one in-depth questionnaire. It was a company called Phenometrica. It was out of Australia. It's been acquired twice. I think it's part of Morningstar. Not that I'm intending to plug a competitor, but they have a fine personality profile.
sure.
They did a really nice job with that personality profile, but like everything else I saw, it didn't go beyond that. It said if you want to measure your client's capacity, financial capacity, which the SEC refers to as financial ability. So we've adopted their terminology. But if you want to measure the client's financial ability, you had to do that separately. And there weren't any tools that did this. And the process I saw advisors taking, this was 2009. So the process that we saw other advisors and firms taking was that risk tolerance was just a personality profile. It was totally detached from the financial planning process. And I really couldn't believe that that was the case in, now 2009 seems like a long time ago, but in the state of the art 2009, which is how I felt at the time, nobody was doing that. And
Yeah.
so I had a broad background in building math models for various types of risk management. And so I said, well, I'm going to approach this the same way we look at big fixed income portfolios. A household set of cash flows is really like a complicated bond, right? I mean, a traditional treasury or corporate note might pay coupon every 6 months and principal at the maturity. When you're dealing with household cash flows, you're dealing with irregular inflows and outflows, and you're dealing with them across often more than one tax status.
Yeah.
But in its essence, the mathematics behind it is really like a complex bond. And so I approached it the same way. And I was able to develop an objective methodology, a mathematical calculation to actually measure someone's financial ability to take risk, not only now, but as it evolved over time. And I could do it expressed as a stocks to bonds benchmark, which is how most advisor client conversations were happening. Hey, should you be a 60-40, a 70-30, a 50-50? So that made it very usable in terms of the advisor client dialogue, and ended up mating that with a psychometric profile. My wife actually helped with it. She's
Oh,
a
nice.
behaviorist and has her doctorate in psychology. And so we did this psychometric profile and we calibrated it to that same stocks to bonds benchmark. And we had the advent of the first truly two-dimensional scientific approach to profiling clients. And so that's how it started. It was really not meant as another company. I remember in the beginning, this was just a huge spreadsheet model I built for my RIA and our advisors. And the feedback was so tremendous over the coming years that eventually said, hey, wait a minute, there's actually a need for this in the industry. And I spun out the IP and hired a development team, and the product looks like so different than obviously it did in its early infancy. And now it's really about taking that core essence and using it to create better visualization, for advisors to have better engagement, to make the compliance process really uber data driven so that it's objective, it's repeatable, it's documentable, it's consistent across clients, across advisors, things like that. And that's really why I think we've gotten all these accolades, because advisors use it to improve engagement, which helps them with growth, right? It generates, it converts more leads to become clients. It facilitates more referrals, things like that, and it also reduces compliance risk by making it a very data-driven process.
Yeah, I'm interested in there's a lot of tech companies now coming from Silicon Valley or just like people that don't even have necessarily any experience in this industry that are creating tech tools for advisors. But there's also just a ton of tools where an advisor actually had the idea because they wanted it for their own clients. And there's like CFPs, like several guests on my podcast already are like CFPs that decided to build a tech solution.
Yep.
Um, what as a user and a builder of technology for advisors, what's your opinion of like tech that's created by technologists versus tech that's created by advisors?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are pros and cons, and
Yeah.
you have to bridge whatever gap you're starting with. Um, Necessity was the mother of invention, as you've alluded to in many others. So that's not that unusual. Being able to go from that to build something that is truly a better mousetrap and works for a broader population, that's a whole different game. You have to become a technologist if you
Okay.
weren't already one. I wasn't already one. I had to learn how to do that, and I learned through lots of mistakes. Candidly, I mean, I guess the ideal world is you're a practitioner and you're a technologist. That's probably pretty unusual to find, but I'm sure some people out there may have had both experiences. For me, I had to learn how to be a technologist. But it's been a really fun journey. And I'll tell you, while the initial ideas were mine, the ways we've made it better, the ways we've made the product more usable, more powerful, those ideas come from a lot of different people. They come from people internally and they come from our users. And they come from people who aren't our users who said, for me to use this, it would have to do X, Y, or Z.
Sure.
What's interesting and what you learn, I think, as a technologist is you have to balance out the the features and functions that you hear constantly with those that you hear rarely. And the
Mhm.
reason I say that is if you're hearing something constantly, it's because somebody else is already doing it. You're playing catch up. And sometimes
Right.
we have to do that. The things that you hear occasionally, you have to be very careful. You don't spend a lot of time and resources going down some rabbit hole building something that very few people are going to use. And so we actually started a product advisory council of kind of experienced advisors who have a love and a real experience with technology, so that before we get too far down the rabbit hole with something, we have other practitioners that really can tell us if they'd use it, how they want it to work, so that we can spend our time and resources most efficiently.
Right. Yeah, we were talking a little bit before we got on about like futurism or like predicting where the industry is going. And I think that that's a super interesting thing to do. And that's not even like building what advisors are asking for. That's like building what you think they should be asking for. Or
It's a balance, right? If we
yeah,
only build what everybody's asking for, then we're always playing catch up. We can't lead,
right.
but we also can't spend the majority of our time building things that one person made a request for either. So there's definitely a balancing act. I love the Wayne Gretzky quote, and I'll
Right.
probably butcher it, but it's about you have to skate where the puck is going rather than where it is now. I mean, it seems obvious when you're watching a sport as fast as hockey, but it's very relevant in what we do in technology as well. We have to think about where the industry is going if we're going to continue to play a leadership role. And that's important to us.
Yeah, so like a hockey player is like pulling their stick back. They haven't even hit the puck yet, and just based on the angle of their stick and the force that you feel like they're going to hit it with, you can kind of guess where it's going to end up.
Yep.
Um, because it's going to move a whole lot faster than you can skate to it,
Sure.
or because the speed of the puck, I guess.
Look,
And that's
sharpshooters from a distance have to make some adjustment for the curvature of the earth, for gravity, for wind. They have to contemplate these things. It's not just firing what necessarily would appear to be the center of a target.
yeah, no, and it's um, I did wasn't even thinking like this. Like I was thinking, like my work just builds on Kitz's work. He's got the tech directory. A lot of advisors are overwhelmed by the directory. Like, why don't I just like pick a tool in each category and just say here's the best based on whatever criteria. But then I was talking with John Swiston, and he's like, "No, dude, you're more like a tastemaker. You're like saying what the tech should be, as opposed to what's available currently." And so now I'm even more focused on like if I have a favorite custodian and a favorite new CRM, they might not have any user overlap yet, but it's like I
Mm.
want that integration to get built as quickly as possible, not after they have 100 users that happen to overlap. Um,
That's very interesting.
so that's what I'm doing with my book for next year because I'm probably going to release another book. Is like I'm already talking to the companies that maybe don't even integrate yet, and like I'd like you to be my choice for next year. Like, can you guys build an integration by the time this book comes out?
It's fascinating. I was talking to this an executive at a large organization within the space, and we get a lot of their membership asking us, to engage in some kind of partnership, and you know we integrate with the two largest financial planning vendors, eMoney and MoneyGuide. This particular organization, I, a very large majority of their membership use a different tool.
Okay.
Um, so it is very much this cart and horse, right? Why aren't those members demanding integration with that? Well, some of them do, but if two parties develop that relationship, then that integration is logically going to happen, because then you're going to have a lot of those common constituents who are demanding it. If you develop the integration, then that generates the membership too, because you get somebody who wants to use that common set of technology. So I like the way you're thinking. What are the things that should work together that will drive the adoption, rather than wait for the adoption, which sometimes happens and sometimes doesn't happen. It depends on how everything fits together. Naturally, we get more users who use eMoney and MoneyGuide than we do with other financial planning vendors. That doesn't mean we wouldn't be willing to do similar integrations, or it doesn't mean that those wouldn't be productive. But it's like most other vendors, and maybe this is too rudimentary, I think, to your point, but we prioritize based on the requests.
Right.
Well, if we had the integrations, then we would get the usership. If we get the usership, then we get the integrations. But somebody's got to move first. So I
Yeah.
think your
No, so
point's an interesting one.
most technologies have some sort of like feature request that that users can upvote or something. And so I'm starting to be like, we need this integration. So one of you users go put in this feature request, and then I'm going to send this link out to all the other users to be like, upvote this request so that it rises to the top. And then it gets the attention of the people that make those decisions. But it's like
Yep.
I'm
You
almost like trying to force the way forward as
you're
opposed to
gonna be
letting
you're
them.
gonna be the puppet master. You're gonna steer the industry by helping people figure out all of these moving parts.
I don't know. I mean, I want to stay humble, but I do enjoy trying to make things like that happen.
Very
Um,
cool.
so we talked a little bit about your background in the risk category. Do you want to hop into a demo? We can do maybe a 10 or 20-minute demo, and then we can talk
Yeah,
about the
sure.
category or the roadmap, and maybe some success stories that your users
Yeah,
have had.
yeah, absolutely. And if you want, I can. I mean, we're obviously not going to look at the whole system, but if you want, I can spend a few minutes on the latest AI driven
Oh yeah, for sure.
features, since we were talking about that. Let me
Yep,
see. Let's see. Tell me, is that visible for you?
it is.
So this is our live site, app.dollars.com. Obviously, it's all branded for each advisor, each firm. So we do occasionally get asked questions like, "Does mine have to say Advisors Inc. on it?" You would be embarrassed to know how often we've gotten questions like that.
Oh, I was talking
Um,
to someone at Caesar's Pizza, and they're like, "You know how many times we get asked the question, is your $5 pizza $5?" We're like,
wow,
yes, our
yeah,
$5 pizza is $5.
yeah. Well, you listen, to their credit, the dollar store is not all a dollar anymore. So I
Exactly.
guess maybe these things. Anyway, um, again, we're not going to look at everything. I'm going to open up an assessment just to save some time, just to give users advisors a sense about this if they've not seen Tolerus before. So we do use the nomenclature from the SEC, so you'll see the personality profiles referred to as someone's willingness to accept risk. This is Jane Doe, a very real client. You'll see super simple questions about how Jane feels, how she thinks she compares to others, how others identify her, how she believes she's behaved, how she anticipates behaviors. We want to make sure this does not confuse anybody. That's very, very important. We've got Jane and John Doe here. What I'm showing you is the advisor's view. Instead of this, the advisor could also send a link home, let Jane and John Doe provide responses from home if they want. They can include just the personality profile. They can include the financial questions too. Now, if they include financial questions in the link at home, it's not going to look like this. It would spoon feed them one question at a time. Jane, how old are you? Do you have a spouse? Are you retired? Stuff like that. If they want, they could send a link that only has the personality profile. Maybe they'll do the financial stuff together as part of their discovery. Maybe they work with one of our financial planning vendor partners, such as eMoney here, and they have, let's say they lead with planning and they've already done an eMoney for Jane and John Doe. They can simply bring in the data from eMoney like that. Or if they're doing the other way, right? If they lead with investment management and they haven't done a full financial plan yet, they could do tolerance first, and they could use that functionality to send data to eMoney, which is a nice feature. And we also have integrations with Orion, with Black Diamond, with Redtail and Wealthbox, with Schwab, with Pershing. So, and there'll be more coming to your point. This could be a very simple and high-level exercise. There are 4 required fields: age, retirement age, unless they're already retired, and I guess it's 3 fields. There has to be something for spending, there have to be some outflows, and there have to be some assets someplace. And again, you can connect these accounts to your eMoney or Orion or Schwab or whatnot. Just to show folks who've never seen it just a little bit here, if you have big ticket items, goals, you can enter those. If you want to customize a cash flow, you can do that. Here, this couple has a huge distribution, $500,000, and it's happening in a pretty short period of time, 2026. So if you can envision, when we think about their financial ability or capacity to take risk, that is going to be greatly suppressed because they're using a lot of their resources in a short period of time. And what we'll see is after they get past this event, the money left over, the money they're continuing to save and grow, it's going to have a longer time horizon. It's going to drive up their financial ability to take risk. And you could have Social Security, you could have an annuity or a part-time job or whatever income streams, inflows, outflows. Really, you could drill in and customize anything here. We use the standardized stocks to bonds benchmark scale. Interestingly, our peers seem not to do that. They seem to use their own proprietary scales. There's nothing wrong academically with them doing that, but we find, if John scores a 70, I'm gonna round for talking points. If John scores a 70, we're saying that equates to the risk level of a benchmark 70-30 broad stocks to bonds level of risk. Right. So it just makes it easier to communicate with the client. I chose to use an average of Jane and John's willingness scores, but you could have chosen one or the other as a cap. Maybe Jane's the decision maker, or maybe you got to override, you got to lean one way or another, or you got to depart from this range. Gives you a lot of flexibility. If you do an override of any type, a little box pops up, you must document why you did the override. That's for compliance purposes. A lot of what we do is about making this process super data driven so that it's objective, repeatable, documentable, consistent across the board. Another cool analytical feature for your members that are very analytical is that we built mortality probabilities year by year by spouse inside the simulation. That's a very unusual and very unique and advanced feature. So we're saying that, hey, Jane, because of her characteristics, has a weighted average life expectancy of 90, but we are not just running the simulation till her 90th birthday. We are accounting for the small probability she gets hit by a bus next year, as well as the small probability she lives until she's 119 years old too, and sort of the bell curve distribution, in between. And when we've got 2 individuals, the system's actually smart enough to do second to die probabilities year by year. So it's a quite a robust system, but as you can see, it presents super simply, and I think that intersection is really what has led to the awards and accolades and things like that. All that fancy math boils down to simple outputs. You saw how quickly it computed, which is again another attractive feature to make this so usable. We see here it all boils down to a suggested risk directive in that stocks to bonds benchmark format. So Jane and John's holistic score of 40 would suggest about a 40-60 stocks to bonds benchmark. And you see here, all the information boils down to a simple display of financial longevity, which is that there's an 8% chance that Jane Doe or John Doe or both would be alive after their assets are gone. So this is really the barometer to help the advisor and client have confidence in the risk directive that they're contemplating. If this 8% were really 78% chance that one or both would outlive their money, nobody would want to rely on a suggested risk directive. And the flip side is that in order to rely on the probability of running out of money, you best not just know today's risk level, you got to know how it's likely to evolve over time as well. That influences that financial longevity. And this chart shows the custom glide path that's unique to this couple at this time. And I think the reason why advisors find this to be a very popular piece of content to put in front of the client, because all of the things here on the right, these are all optional. The reason this one's popular is it really showcases that the advisor customized this analysis for this client and that they're going to be with this client throughout all of these life events. And we can see here actually their ability to take risk bottoms out next year. If you can see the fine print in the box there, it bottoms out when they go to pull $500,000 out. This is not a coincidence mathematically. We see it go way up for a while. We can contrast that with their willingness to accept risk, which is how they performed on that personality profile. And whichever's the constraint over time is what creates that custom glide path. And of course, as we said, that custom glide path is built into all the other analytics, including probability of running out of money and so forth. Does that make sense from your vantage point?
Yeah, no, this is what I loved the first time I saw this. I don't know any other software that presents it quite like this.
Yeah, it's
Um,
pretty, yeah, go ahead.
some put it on like a bar graph with like the household score and uh, the personality score and the ability score, but no, I haven't ever seen it graphed like over the age.
The other attempts we've seen to measure ability are usually a little more qualitative, and so they don't have the functionality to show how something evolves over time. And I think that by doing it completely objectively, mathematically, that gives us that flexibility. One of the things that for advisors that tend to go deeper, not everybody does this, but for those that tend to go deeper, they really like that they can look at where risk should be allocated from a chronological standpoint. So in my exaggerated example, where this couple was pulling $500,000 out towards the purchase of a property, the advisor already knew that they are not going to suggest this client pilfer their IRAs and 401ks to meet that goal. And Tolerus knows that as well. So we can see amongst these taxable assets, this client should have an extremely low risk level because they're taking the bulk of their risk right now in those retirement accounts. This is an exaggerated example, but it handles the mathematics and the display and documents things for compliance, which is nice. I'm going to skip ahead to a few other things because I know we don't have all day. But if any of your members are interested, we're happy to walk them through a more in-depth demonstration. They can score portfolios, they can upload them, they can bring them in from tools like Orion or eMoney or their favorite custodian. They'll get risk scores, they'll get other characteristics, things like that. This funded level chart's a really popular one as well. And again, there's really nothing else like this in the industry. This says what percentage of all future expenses are already funded today, and with each subsequent year you work, how much more of your future are you funding? And in this case, we see for Jane and John Doe, it looks like they reach a fully funded retirement when Jane is someplace between age 65 and 66. Now, the other question clients routinely ask is, well, if we want to retire earlier, what's the trade-off? Right? And we could see here, if this couple wants to retire when Jane's 63, they're 86% funded, which means they'd have to curtail their lifestyle 14%. They'd have to live on 86% of the lifestyle they projected in order to be fully funded at that point in time. So it really gets to the heart of those main questions of, Are we on track? And what's the trade-off if we want to retire early? So advisors really say clients love this. And to your earlier point, it's about engagement.
Right.
It's I'll show you one AI feature here, and then I'm going to show you the latest. So this one takes the data collected and computed, regardless of the data source. So whether you collected it, whether the advisor interviews a client, or whether the client fills out our fact finder, or whether the data comes in from eMoney, Money Guide, etc. It'll take the data collected and computed. The advisor will choose a style or a tone, and it will create a written narrative summary. And this is for clients that might learn better through narrative, right? Explain to me what's going on. Don't just shove numbers in my face. Just don't just shove a pretty picture in my face, although that works for a lot of people. But some people prefer narrative. So this we empower advisors to reach as many clients as possible in different ways, because people learn in different ways. And ultimately, all these are just examples of content the advisor can use both in front of the client as well as on a PDF report. They can pick and choose. They can make templates. So if they have kind of go-to content they like, they can do that. Integrate seamlessly with some of the popular CRMs. They can take everything they collected and computed. It'll type up a note for them, and they can send that over to their favorite CRM, or they can type in something custom. So a lot of functionality to make the advisor's workflow easier and to improve engagement and reduce compliance risk, which is what we're kind of about. I was going to show you the latest. This came out in the last week, actually. Let me
Cutting edge right
pull up.
here.
What did you say? Yes, yeah. No,
Cutting edge.
this is absolutely. So I'm going to go into my Jane and John Doe here, and I'm going to click Tolerus AI Companion. So this it really uses modern LLMs, modern AI, to create an interactive experience at the client's own pace and time. So we're going to just call it a client check-in. I'm gonna connect it to that same assessment we were just looking at, and maybe as an advisor, I'm gonna prompt something else. I'll tell you what, just so it's live TV, just so everybody knows this is not fixed. Why don't you tell me the prompt? What is something above and beyond, or something more unique that the advisor might want to float in front of this client? Just give me something off the cuff.
They're super pro Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's been crashing the past few weeks or months.
What are your thoughts about the recent rollback in Bitcoin? How's that?
Great.
All right. So let's generate a link. Okay. All right. Now, we're not going to be able to use everything here because I want everybody to hear this. If the advisor's client is doing this on a phone or something where they have a microphone, they can actually talk to this. We're going to just do it. I'm going to type just so you can see what I'm typing, because I think
Sure.
I've tried this before and it comes through my headset, but I don't think anybody signed into the webinar is going to be able to do that. So again, I could switch to voice if you can see down here, but we're going to keep it in writing. Hi, Jane. Welcome to your financial check-in. Before we get started, has anything significant changed in your life, your financial institution, since our last conversation that you think I should know about? This could include changes in employment, health, family, or any large purchases or plan. Okay, so it did not include Bitcoin there. Let's see if it manages to work Bitcoin in. I hope I'm not going to be embarrassed by our agentic companion here. So this is I am serving as the client. But I'm going to ask you to tell me what to write, again, just to keep it fair and unbiased. So how should we respond? So you and I are going to play the role of Jane and John Doe, or Jane Doe here. And this is the Tolerus AI Companion for Jane's advisor.
Yeah. What about we just inherited 100,000? Looking to see how best we can use that money.
All right. Thanks for sharing that. Inheriting significant sum can open up many options. Do you and John have any immediate plans or priorities for this inheritance, such as paying down debt, investing for the future, contributing to your upcoming house purchase, or something else? Or would you like to discuss various possibilities together with your advisor? What should we write?
So is that the house purchase that you modeled earlier with like the $500,000 cash outlay
Let
based on
me
the
see. Yes, it is actually. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly
uh
right. You know, it's funny. I didn't even catch that. You
oh
caught it. That's absolutely correct. Yep, because it's
oh
referencing that database, if you will. It's referencing that risk assessment. That's great.
right.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say investing for the future.
Mm, stay interested. Investing. Okay. You want to give it something provocative? You want to see if we can stump it or something? If the goal of investing for the future money, are you considering using any portion of the inheritance towards your upcoming house purchase in 2026? Yeah, very specifically referencing that. Or do you want to keep the full amount invested for long-term goals like retirement? Also, how are you both feeling about the current investment landscape? Have recent events in the market, like a pullback in Bitcoin,
There you go.
influenced your views or made you reconsider your risk tolerance? I was a little worried that it wasn't going to use it properly, but yeah. So this is, I mean, this is where we are. Um, let's just, I know you haven't used this before, so I'm gonna put in something like way out in left field, just to try to create some more exaggerated example. But let me show you. Let's say we're terrified about the war in Ukraine. If I can spell Ukraine correct. Ukraine? Does it have an E at the end? Yes. We're thinking about putting everything, let's say, pulling everything out of the market and putting it under our mattress. What do you think? All right.
I hope it suggests buying like a really nice mattress, like one of those like
I
incline ones
will.
that like
I
heats
hope.
and
What?
cools and stuff.
Right. What do you think of Tempur-Pedic? Or thank you for being so honest about your feelings, Jane. It's completely understandable to be anxious with everything going on in the world. It might be helpful for your advisor to walk you through the current risk level of your investments, how they align with your comfort level. Would you be open to setting up a call? So it's prompting that, discuss your options, and make sure your financial plan still feels right for both of you. Absolutely. Okay. Um, I don't know if I have this set up to provide a link, but you can. Advisors can. Is there anything specific you'd like to make sure you discuss? I mean, this will continue until either the client ends the chat or until the companion thinks that we're not progressing. So if it thinks it's coming back to the same items, it's not progressing, it'll politely exit. I'm gonna end the chat, and what I want to show you is a couple things from the advisor's perspective that come with that. Okay, so I'm going to go back in here. This is the advisor's view. And let's see here. I got to remember where we put it. See, this is all new to me too. Here, under client worksheets, we have Tyler's AI companion. Okay. So here we go. So date created. I don't know why it's not number one. I'll have to see why it's not ordering it as number one. I could filter, but you can see here, this is December 11th at 2:44 p.m. So this is the one we just did. We can see the actual transcript, right? And I think the next step, one of the things they're building is that this will sync. If you've got the CRM integrations, you could have this sync automatically like that. But let
Yeah.
me, oh yeah, here it is actually. I think maybe they did it. So you could send it to your CRM. Yeah. So that, I think that's out. And then the other thing I wanted to show is this report. Yeah, so it's triggering what things should happen. And we kind of deliberately created some more extreme circumstances. So it even triggered an emergency check-in, right? Saying they're very anxious about world events, considering dramatic investment changes, reflecting distress beyond ordinary concern, right? So the advisor should drop everything and check in with this client, and they can get alerted to these types of things. And it's
Yeah.
giving kind of an AI summary of notes Very anxious about global events, particularly the war in Ukraine, considering making dramatic changes due to fear. They have inherited $100,000, interested in investing it for the future, but unsure how to proceed. So it's using similar kinds of technology that like the note takers use to be able to summarize, but it's also allowing you to sync with your CRM, and it's allowing that sort of chat GPT style interaction, whether they're typing or they're verbally talking to it. And it's also prompting the advisor on actionable next steps. So, what you're seeing here was just released over the weekend. I mean, this is absolute cutting edge, and I'm
Yeah.
thrilled to be able to share it with you. Our early adopters have really appreciated this, and I know other technologies are headed in this direction, but we're always excited to be out there upfront with these kind of cutting edge functionality and so forth. Anyway, so I could keep going for a while, but I want to be mindful of time. So you tell me if there are other things you want to see or if you just want to talk.
Yeah, no, let's just talk for the last 8 minutes or so. You might not have actual use cases yet, but it seems like this needs to be tied directly to a specific risk tolerance questionnaire, correct?
That's a great question. It does not actually.
Okay.
Now, there is some limitation in the functionality if you don't. Like you saw in this one, it was referencing the house purchase in 2026. Obviously, it's not going to know that in
Right.
that case. Some of the feedback from our product advisory council was actually that to be able to use it en masse, they need it not to be connected to specific assessments. And in
Right.
fact, one of the things that came up is to use this inside the 401k arena. Now, you can't do that with 401k participants, but you can provide an interactive experience. It's just not going to reference specific data unique to that person. So,
Right.
so to answer your question, it's not required. There are just some added functionality if you do connect it.
So, like, practically, if you have 100 clients, you'd have to manually go into each client and send out their specific link at this point.
Only if you want it connected to their unique risk assessment. If
Okay.
you want one that's at your subscription level but does not connect to that, you can do that, but then you're not going to have that extra level of specificity. But you can still make general prompts when you create that link, and you can even make timely prompts. So, like your comment about Bitcoin, so you could create a link that would be intended for anybody that you serve, but maybe your Bitcoin thoughts are potentially relevant to everybody. So that could be an extra prompt that would go into that link.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's cool. I'm excited to see how your users use this feature and then like how it develops over time. Um, this is very interesting. I think this is a good use of AI. I still see value in like actually talking to the advisor and having that like real human interaction, but I think that some advisors are just too busy to address all their clients at this level regularly. And so it's
I,
kind of makes sense.
yeah, it is net. I don't think it's ever going to replace the human interaction.
Right.
It's just another outlet. I look at this and say, what do advisors do now to communicate broadly? Right? They send email. Maybe some of them send a text, but it's not interactive. So if you can send something out broadly, and just like you might send a market update or a newsletter, right? You can include prompts that are relevant to today's environment or to your business or things that their clients might be dealing with, and allow them to interact. Allow now, imagine something personal that can be responsive to each separate conversation, right? Whether that was previously done in email, now you're emailing 100 people separately, right? This is enabling you to do that at their pace, at their convenience. If they want to go back and forth at 2 a.m., they can do it. You're capturing the data, you're syncing the data with your CRM, you're being alerted when one of these conversations really needs that human intervention more quickly,
Right.
right? So it's really just amplifying how well you can serve a larger population. The
Yeah.
advisor can't have 100 conversations going on at once.
Yeah.
This enables them to do that and to
Right.
figure out which are the ones that need the most human attention right now.
Yeah. No, it's very interesting. What anything else you're excited about on the roadmap for Tolerist?
Yeah, other
using AI or otherwise?
I think it's going to continue to grow in this vein, and we're going to continue to get feedback from users to tell us how to make it better. It's going to keep getting better. More and more compliance oriented tools. There's big demand for that. More and more integrations. You and I touched on that. I think that's going to be pretty key for 2026. So yeah, we're really well positioned for 2026. It's hard to think about too far in the future with technology moving so fast, but we like to really try to stay ahead, as you can see, and deliver things that advisors and their clients will benefit from in the short run, and be building for the long run at the same time.
Yeah. How do you see the category shifting? How advisors are using RTQs, or maybe where it falls in the client journey? Like, is this a prospecting tool? Is this a annual client review tool? Is this where do most advisors use this tool?
That's great. Yeah, so it's a few places. Some do use it for prospecting. Not perhaps the version I showed you. There's a light version of the exercise that's 5 minutes or less, all encompassing, and so that's more commonly used for prospecting. The one I showed you, which is called Tolerus Pro, that's the most customizable and
Okay.
really gets to a unique experience for each client. That's typically done both as an onboarding, and then it's easy to update and refresh in, let's say, an annual review or an annual update. So they'll typically use it like that. So it's used to stimulate engagement, drive confidence in the advisor's process, which is good for referrals, good for retention, and it's also, as we talked about, it's really good to make this whole process very, very data driven. So it's objective, repeatable, documentable, really strong for that culture of compliance, that fiduciary duty of care, things like
Yeah, it's super interesting watching these different tools in the different categories. Like, there's light financial planning tools that are delving into like the data gathering category, and then there's risk tolerance tools that are delving into like the retirement planning category. Um, and y- I think in this case, like, you're in like light financial planning in a way, with all the tracking all the different cash flows, and showing the glide path. And I mean, it's not like an asset glide path; it's a risk glide path. But
Yeah, it's I think you're right, but obviously we're different enough that the big financial planning vendors, being eMoney and Money Guide, chose to integrate with us to
right,
make the advisor's process and the advisor client experience better. So we don't, those technologies do a lot of things, a lot of modules that we don't get into, which is why advisors often have both. But it's really important that risk tolerance and financial planning be nicely and tightly integrated with each other. They've got to be consistent. They've got to be commensurate. And so that's how I see the landscape shifting. And I think we're the ones that have really bridged that gap. What we typically see are really personality profiles, and then a few of them have added extra questions to try to make adjustments based on time horizon of utility. And
okay.
while I appreciate their efforts in kind of starting to walk down that path, what we did that was so unique is making it completely mathematical, making it totally data driven. And that's how we've been able to really integrate so seamlessly into the financial planning process.
Right. Um, any spicy takes in the industry as a whole? We had Ryan George come on, and he said the Advise AI conference was the charlatans conference.
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything really spicy. Ryan's great. DocuPace is great. We get a lot of requests for integration with their Precise FP tool, which I would expect in 2026. Done
Nice.
a lot of dialogue on that, and certainly if your members are interested in that, absolutely let us know, let them know, and we will do our best to prioritize as we usually do. But they do a great job with integrations. They do a great job with data gathering, and I think those are really important parts of any tech stack. And that's why we continue to try to make that process better, tighter, easier, faster, cheaper. For the advisors that we serve.
Yeah. No, I like the one screen you showed that showed like data coming in from eMoney, and then I think it showed like a version of like what data to copy over, basically.
Yeah, exactly. That screen will start with whatever the user prompted. So if the user said, "Hey, I'm going to send data from Tolerus to eMoney," it's going to show you the Tolerus data value.
Okay.
Um, and if you went the other direction, it would do it the opposite. But what it allows you to do before you hit go or send, it allows you to say, you know what, I just updated this piece of information in this other system. That's the one I want to use. So it'll allow
Okay.
you to on the fly make that change, which is a cool feature.
No, that's great. Yeah. No, integrating softwares and figuring out which one's going to override which one is some of the complicated parts of RIA operations.
Here's the spicy truth about integrations.
Okay.
Some do it just to check a box. They do it
Right.
just to say we have the integration. Oh, we have integration. Well, what is that? Oh, we have SSO. All right, we have single sign-on. All right, yeah, I guess that's integration, but we're going for much more. I think advisors are getting too smart for that. I think
Right.
they really want to make their process better. They want more than just SSO, and that Tolerus money integration was a great example where we went beyond really what I think either of us had really done before with anybody else, and that's designed to push the industry to get better and better. And so I think that's what you're going to continue to see. I think most vendors are cooperative. Most want to make the advisor client experience better, whether it's engagement or it's efficiency, as you talked about earlier. They want to make one or both better for
Right.
everybody involved.
Yeah. No, every time I demo Tolerance, I'm impressed. I feel like you're doing something unique.
I
And I
appreciate that.
appreciate the work you're doing with AI as well.
I appreciate
Pretty
that.
cool. All right. Well,
Excellent.
thanks for coming on today. Thanks for your support of my book in the past. It's been a blast to work with you.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, we were pleasantly surprised when you kind of featured us in the category, and we love to get as many eyeballs on that as possible since
Yep.
it's pretty favorable to us. So we
Right.
appreciate it, and it's nice having been able to get to know you since the book came out. I appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
Very
Well,
good. Thank you for having me.
yeah. Have a good rest of your day.
Take care.
Bye
You
bye.
too. Bye.